The burden of a perfect vow. In the sacred verses of the Qur'an, God mentions a noble prophet among the ranks of the steadfast, and mention Ishmael and Enoch and Dhul-Kifl. All were of the patient, and we admitted them into our mercy. Indeed, they were of the righteous. Qur'an, chapter 21, verses 85 to 86. Thoughtful. What is the true price of a promise? Is it measured in words spoken in a crowded hall, or in the silent, unseen battles waged within the soul when no one is watching? And what kind of man would make a pledge so impossibly perfect, so contrary to the very fabric of human emotion, that the sworn enemy of God would make it his personal mission to see him broken? Our story unfolds in an age long past among the children of Israel. Their venerable prophet king, thought by commentators to be Elisha, peace be upon him, was old and frail. He needed to find a successor, but he wasn't looking for a warrior or a politician. He was looking for a man whose spirit was a fortress. His people were good, but they were prone to the passions and heated disputes that make a mockery of justice. The king knew that to rule them fairly, a leader needed more than wisdom. He needed a heart that could not be set ablaze by the sparks of conflict. Anger, he knew, was the ink with which Satan wrote his favorite stories. One day, the elderly king gathered his people. Wearily, "I am old," he announced, thoughtfully, "and I wish to appoint a successor." He looked out at the faces before him, then laid down a challenge so demanding it seemed designed to be impossible. Challenging. "Who among you will guarantee me 3 things?" he asked, his voice cutting through the silence. Sternly. "Who will pledge to fast every day, stand in prayer every night, and never get angry while judging the people?" A wave of disbelief washed over the crowd. Fasting every day was the feat of an ascetic. Praying every night was the devotion of a saint, disbelievingly. But to never feel anger while ruling? It was a vow against human nature itself. The ambitious looked away. The wise knew their own limits. Just as the king was about to dismiss them, a lone figure rose. He was a young man named Bishr, known not for power, but for a quiet serenity. "I will," he said, his voice calm but clear. The king, thinking the youth naive, repeated the challenge the next day. Again the crowd was silent, and again only Bishr stood. On the 3rd day, the scene repeated. Finally, the king knew he had found his man. From that day, Bishr would be known by a new name, a title earned through his monumental pledge, Dhul-Kifl, the one of the guarantee. As he took his seat as the new judge and leader, he felt the immense weight of his title. The people, whispering, was this piety or arrogance thoughtful? How long could any man uphold such a standard before reality humbled him? But the greatest skeptic was not in the marketplace. He was in the shadows, a being of smokeless fire, seething with contempt. Iblis, the great deceiver, heard of the promise, and has. A human who claimed to have conquered anger? The challenge was an irresistible insult. The siege on a prophet's soul. A fortress is not tested by a frontal assault, but by a patient siege that seeks the smallest crack. Dhul-Kifl began his reign with a discipline that was nothing short of miraculous. By day, he judged the people, his court a sanctuary of calm. His nights were a silent conversation with his Creator. His only rest from his continuous fast was a brief, precious nap at midday. This unwavering routine was a source of mounting fury for Iblis. As classical commentators like Ibn Kathir narrate, he first sent his demon foot soldiers to tempt the new leader with whispers of power and ease. They all returned in failure. Iblis decided this required his personal touch. He would not break this prophet's faith, but his vow. He would use the most mundane and effective of human tortures, sheer, unrelenting frustration. He waited for that precise moment in the heart of the day when Dhul-Kifl, weary from fasting and his duties, lay down for his only rest. Suddenly, a loud, jarring knock echoed through the palace. A servant answered to find a frantic-looking old man, his face a mask of desperation. "I must see the judge," he cried. "I have been wronged." The servant tried to explain. "The judge is resting. Please return later." "Resting?" The old man, Iblis in disguise, feigned outrage. "How can a man of justice rest when the wicked prey upon the weak?" Dhul-Kifl, his body aching for sleep, felt the first pull of his test. A flash of human annoyance pricked at his heart, the deep desire to be left in peace. But he took a breath, conquered the feeling, and chose his promise. Resigned. "Let him in," he called out. What followed was a masterclass in psychological warfare. Iblis, as the old man, launched into a long, rambling, and contradictory story about his wicked people, all designed to exhaust the patience of a saint. Dhul-Kifl listened to the entire tirade without a single flicker of annoyance. When Iblis finally paused, the prophet replied serenely, "Go and bring your opponents here, and I will judge between you." The next day, at the very same time, the obnoxious knocking returned. Again, Dhul-Kifl felt the heavy pull of fatigue and the tempting whisper of irritation. And again, he chose his vow over his comfort, sacrificing his only rest. This became a daily assault, a grinding campaign of annoyance aimed at the heart of his promise. Iblis was chipping away at his energy, hoping his exhaustion would finally cause his patience to snap. The unmasking. On the third day, feeling the immense strain, Dhul-Kifl instructed his household strained, "Bar the doors. Let no one enter while I take my rest today." He needed this moment of peace to uphold the other parts of his sacred guarantee. The palace fell silent. The locks were bolted. But what use are earthly locks against an enemy who walks through walls? As Dhul-Kifl closed his eyes, a chill entered the room. A shadow fell over him. He opened his eyes to a sight that would have frozen the blood of any other man. The old man was standing right beside his bed. He had not come through the barred door. He had slipped in through a small, sealed window. An impossible feat. This was the moment of truth. Every human instinct would scream to cry out in alarm, to shout in anger at this terrifying invasion. This was the moment Dhul-Kifl's heroic journey reached its peak. He sat up, and in his heart the battle was waged and won in an instant. He looked at the intruder, not with fear or fury, but with a profound, piercing insight. He saw past the disguise and recognized the true nature of his tormentor. "Enemy of God," Dhul-Kifl said, his voice not a shout, but a calm statement of fact. "Is that you?" The question was so direct, so utterly devoid of the anger Iblis had worked so hard to provoke, that it shattered the entire deception. The form of the old man wavered, and the malevolent presence of Iblis filled the room. The great deceiver was exposed, his plan in ruins. "You have defeated me," Iblis hissed, his voice dripping with venom and a grudging respect. He confessed that his entire campaign was designed for one purpose, to make him angry. And he had failed. He, the master of whispers who had tempted nations, stood utterly humiliated by the quiet, unshakable self-control of a single man. He vanished from the room, leaving behind the profound silence of his own defeat. Dhul-Kifl had won. His victory was not in vanquishing a physical foe, but in conquering the seeds of anger within himself. He was truly Dhul-Kifl, the one of the guarantee. The echo of a quiet victory. Why? Would this ancient story of one man's internal struggle resonate so powerfully centuries later during the time of the final prophet, Muhammad? Peace and blessings be upon him. Because the battlefield had changed, but the war had not. The story of Dhul-Kifl was a divine lesson in fortitude for Prophet Muhammad, who faced a different kind of provocation every day in Mecca. Every insult and injury was a test of his anger. This story was a divine reminder. This is the path of all prophets. Your brother Dhul-Kifl conquered the master of provocation through patience, and you too shall be given the strength to endure. The prophet himself would later summarize the essence of Dhul-Kifl's entire life, teaching, thoughtful. The strong man is not the one who can overpower others in wrestling. Rather, the strong man is the one who controls himself when he is angry. The story of Dhul-Kifl forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. In our modern world, we often feel our anger is justified. But how often is that righteousness just our own ego, cleverly disguised by the whispers of the same enemy who visited Dhul-Kifl? His impossible promise serves as an eternal challenge. It asks us to look at the daily provocations in our own lives, in traffic, on social media, in family arguments, and decide, will we be a slave to our reactions? Or will we, like the one of the guarantee, find the strength to choose peace?